Recently, ISIS has called for more terror attacks during Ramadan. It's another scare in a country still recovering from the trauma of the Charlie Hebdo attacks in January, with fears there could be more lone wolf attacks ahead.
The holy month of Ramadan is the Islamic month of fasting. Muslims all over the world abstain from food, drink, and other physical needs during daylight hours. Their sole attention is supposed to be directed on their God and self-sacrifice. It is thus a time of peace, which makes it the perfect time for terrorists to strike and grab world attention with atrocities and shock. A beheading in France, dozens gunned down on a beach in Tunisia, a suicide attack on a mosque in Kuwait, seemingly timed and coordinated. And a peaceful time is shattered with the realization there is no safe place and no safe time from these killers. Welcome back to the Hardline. Former CIA analyst and our intel specialist, Lisa Ruth, joins us. Lisa, I mentioned the word coordinated in there, and while there is absolutely, I want to get it very clear, no proof that it is, you've got to guess it is. Warning is made on Tuesday. On the same day this all happens, these people are getting better, and they're doing it around the world.
Absolutely. And you're right. We preface this all by saying we don't know yet. However, it's incredibly coincidental. The same time around the world, very, very hard to imagine that there wasn't some coordination at some level here.
We're looking at then coordination. That would indicate communication, that would indicate planning, that would indicate a real idea where they're going. Have we just continually been missing the boat here? Because again, we're trying to figure maybe they'll strike here, maybe they'll strike there, they're building up here, we have military here. We need to be creative in our thinking and start looking at these sites that will be targeted.
And I think your word creative is exactly right. You know, one of the problems with ISIS, as you and I know, is the media. Sorry to say, but last week it was all about how U.S. forces were getting closer to taking territory from ISIS. ISIS is continuing to evolve. At the same time that they're losing territory, they're digging in the places they have. In some ways, it's like they've decided it's worth giving up the territories that they're holding just peripherally and instead focusing on their main goals. One of those main goals is terror. That means these kinds of attacks around the world, and I think we're going to see more and more of them.
Is it just fair to say that intel specialists, American specialists, whatever, any, would just as soon the media either shut up or be completely left out of it? Because every time they say, there's a warning, there's a possibility, there's this, it gives this vermin just a little more fuel to get the job done. It makes the job tougher for the intel.
Sure, and I think part of it is it's a double-edged sword. You know, we've talked before about social media and how it's great because in some ways we can see what ISIS is doing. On the other hand, we don't know how much of that is disinformation. And one of the problems we've always had, even back in the old Cold War days when I was at the agency, is you're getting information out there. The United States is open. There's a lot of open source stuff you can get. And our media helps with that by saying, oh, we're doing troops here. We're sending another 250 troops there. But that also does let the other side know exactly what we're doing. And in so many ways with ISIS, we're operating blindly.
So then how do we take the blinders off? I mean, I know that we talk about this all the time, but in light of this, and as we evolve, as we need to evolve, what's the next set of blinders we've got to take off? Same ones, as always?
I'm so glad you asked. We need intel. and I'm sorry, I keep saying this. But intelligence, we have got to get back to good old-fashioned intelligence.
But we can't do that anymore because it would seem that socially, America doesn't want the old ways of doing things. Even our government says we can't do the old way of doing things. So isn't that impossible?
It is. It's not impossible, but we got to change that thinking. We have got to get back to saying this is important, and it's absolutely the only way to do it. Terrorists are not going to ever come to us and go, oh, hey, by the way, we're planning an attack in Kuwait. And we have got to reestablish very strong intelligence principles, human intelligence, signals intelligence. We've got to get out there. And until we do, we are not going to win this war.
But by human intelligence, don't we mean basically having spies that are able to then figure out what's going on the ground, which means being able to speak the language, which means many times being locals who are not going to be outed as spies right off the top? That takes years.
It can take years, absolutely, but it also means getting on the ground, yes. And what would happen is you're going to recruit somebody who's going to recruit somebody who's going to recruit somebody. Keep in mind, ISIS is able to survive and thrive because it's got these Sunni supporters. There's also Sunnis who don't like them, but who aren't, if you're in one of these places, you're not going to stand up and go, hey, I hate ISIS. But if you have an option, if you have someone to speak to, that may be something we can take advantage of. If we're not on the ground, if we're not actively recruiting sources, we're not going to get them. I can assure you that.
We have holidays coming up here in America. We're right on the doorstep of 4th of July. We have Memorial Day not too far down the road. Seeing as what happened at a beach resort in Tunisia where dozens were gunned down, and this is just a wild beginning of spray of bullets. How concerned do we need to be right now?
I hate to make it sound like, oh my gosh, we need to be worried all the time, but we do. The fact is, ISIS doesn't have boundaries. ISIS is not concerned about killing civilians, killing women, children, anybody else. Any target they have, I believe they will take. And whether it's the 4th of July or it's August 16th, I don't think it matters.
We seem to be doing better because I hear the FBI is out rounding up a lot of these ISIS supporters that we have around the country right now. They're doing their job. Are they doing enough?
I don't think you can do enough because one of the problems with ISIS is it's not that there's 10 people they can go after. Every 10 you arrest, there's another 10, there's another 20, there's another 30. And until we really get at the roots of this organization, arresting 10 or 20 or 50, there's a whole lot more behind the next door.
I hate to say this, but we're not any closer now than we were at the beginning of the year, maybe?
I don't think we are.
That's a little frightening. And why I said I hate to say this, because we always seem to be talking about this, and I wish we could get to this conversation one time and be able to say that we're ahead of the game a little bit.
You and me both. I would love to be there.
And this is just the problem. And now they're getting coordinated. That's even more dangerous around the world. Always a pleasure, Lisa. Thanks so much for joining us. We didn't mean to make you feel any worse about things coming up, but let's be honest. We have to be vigilant. It is life in the 21st century. All right, coming up next. The anti-vaxxer movement is getting a legislative dose of reality in California. We'll give it to you from a doctor's standpoint when the fastest 60 minutes in news continues.